One in five suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays.
Mondays. We are Marla and Dave. I'm specifically Marla.
Yes, and I'm Dave. And Marla is, while she looks like, I'm here in the nice studio, she's in Vegas still, relaxing and living it up.
Actually, to be truthful, I am now part-time nurse and companion to my mother. So let's keep it real.
Okay.
I
appreciate that. I want to remind everybody that while all these shows, the Mental Health Monday shows, are brought to you by NAMI San Fernando Valley and Loving Beyond Reason, two great nonprofits that really make mental health a focus. We also need you to go to either one of those pages and click the donation page for Mental Health Mondays and help support us bringing you this information every week. It's fun, it's informative, it's educational, it's cathartic. Our guest today is the education coordinator for NAMI San Fernando Valley and focuses her remarkable energy on mental health awareness, outreach to the homeless, and autism advocacy. Favi Gonzalez overcame a troubled childhood and hopes through NAMI San Fernando Valley to develop more classes that are tailored for the Latino community. Also, like most of us, she has dealt with and is dealing with some of her own diagnoses, and in spite of all that, still striving to make a difference in the mental health community. When we come back, our guest is Favi Gonzalez.
Help someone who is struggling by supporting the National Alliance on Mental Illness and be a part of the NAMI effect. Hope starts with you.
Hey guys, listen up. Learn something.
All right, we're back with our guest, Favi Gonzalez. Now, Favi, am I saying that right?
Yes.
All right, so I'm known for mispronouncing people's names. So if I do, just say, hey, Dave, the name is... But my pronunciation is correct, Favi?
Yes, so it's Faviana Gonzalez, but
okay.
I go by Favi for short.
Okay, to her friends, which we are now all friends, she's known as Favi. Marla, you about to say something?
I was just going to say welcome to Mental Health Mondays. And, I say all the time, every conversation that we have about mental health is worth having and hearing. And we're glad that we are able to hear your voice today on that subject. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me and for giving me the platform to share my story.
All right, so awesome. Let's get right to that story, your story, Favi. Tell us what it was like growing up. And where did you grow up, by the way?
So I was actually born in Northridge Hospital in Northridge, California. And I grew up here for most of my life. I did live in Mexico for a year from the age 12 to 13. And then I came back here and led my life, and I'm here now.
Okay, awesome. Well, tell us what it was like growing up. What was your childhood home life like? Was it, would you describe it as just your regular average home life growing up? Was it a little bit more chaotic? Were there issues that might be kind of underlying some of your later issues that you dealt with in life?
No, I mean, I definitely, did not grow up with American or family, that image. There was a lot of issues at home in terms of my parents arguing and fighting. There was also some physical abuse. The way that we were reprimanded mostly was physical from my father's side. I think that was normal to him. That's just what he knew. And then with my mom, she always did the best that she could. So I would just say, I wouldn't say it was normal. We had to overcome a lot. We were alone a lot. So just to give you a little bit of background, my parents separated when I was about 9 years old. My mom stayed here. My dad actually moved back to Mexico with his family. That's where most of his family was. And my mom was okay with the family business for some time. And then unfortunately, she lost it. There was some financial mismanaging.
Right.
And she had to actually send us back to Mexico. So not back to Mexico. She had to send us
When you
to
say
Mexico.
us, you have other siblings.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, do you have siblings?
Yes. So I do have siblings. I have 2 brothers. So it was myself and my middle brother. So I'm the oldest. Then it's my brother. And then I have the youngest one. The youngest one is the one that was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3 years old. So me and my brother were sent to Mexico. The situation was that my mom had enough money to either pay rent for that, next month, or pay for our plane ticket to go be with our dad until she was able to get back on her feet. So, she ended up sending us to my dad's. I was there for a year. My brother actually stayed, and, he kind of made his life there. So there was a lot of hardship while I was in Mexico. I went to, I don't want to say a country that I didn't know.
I was going to say I was going to jump in and ask, just because that Mexico was native to your parents, you were born here. So going there had to be, that in itself sounds like such a disturbance. I didn't have to go to another country, but I experienced that as well, with a traumatic separation of my family at 14, having even go to another school. So I can only imagine going to another country that is supposed to be your native country, but you've now been born and initiated your raising here in California.
No, definitely. And it had its challenges because my father and I had a broken relationship by the time I got to Mexico. I just remember there was an incident where my dad was just beating my mom up. And I ended up calling the police on him. And, I remember that day he was like, "You're not my daughter." And he held on to that. So when I went to Mexico, we didn't speak. He did not like me.
How old were you, Favi, at that point, if you don't mind me asking?
So,
is your preteen or teenage?
No, so this all happened. So when they separated, when I was 9 years old, that incident was what led to that separation.
Got it.
Yeah, so I was 9 years old when that happened. We were sent to Mexico, I would say, when I was 12 years old. So there was, that time period. We didn't really speak to my dad. So he was almost a stranger for those 2 years. And like I said, we had that broken relationship. And unfortunately, the relationship didn't get mended while I was over there. I would say it got even more broken. So Was
there a difference between the way he related to you versus your brother?
Yes. Yes, definitely. And that was even from when we were here. I recall, he would go to the store and come back with gifts for them or better clothes for them than for me. And it was the same thing over there. One thing that I will always remember and that when I'm telling the story is, he would try to make it I don't want to say so easy for my brother, but the best example that I had was he would buy hamburgers and fries as dinner because it was something that was familiar to him, right? Right. But for me, whatever was at home or what that my grandma made, because when we got there, my dad was actually living with my grandma, so we were all there.
Okay, so that. Go ahead, Marla. I'm sorry.
No, I was just as we hear her story. I do know that as we are all dealing with mental health differences, part of those differences are surrounding culture and, different ways through different ethnicities. And so, when I was reading some of your background information, one of the things that you advocate for is the Latino community. And I wanted to find out how the challenges that you dealt with, the resulting of your mental health status and how all of that plays in your community. Because obviously, we do have those differences in how we will accept it, treat it, or not.
And I will add this to what Marla is saying, just so that when you talk about the classic American family sit down with the Cleavers at the dinner table. While I'm not saying that doesn't happen, we're starting to find out more and more now that we have social media that most of that is on the television. And that, and especially families of color, not just the Latin American community, but also the African American community. Definitely. We got spanked. You can tell the difference when a spanking is a spanking and when a spanking is abuse. So, and you know where that line is. So some of those differences we always highlight. But we're talking with our guest, Favi Gonzalez, and she is being very transparent and telling us about how she grew up. And we'll turn that corner when we come right back in just a minute.
When Dave and Marla get together, it's hot.
You may not realize it, but these words, often used to describe someone with a mental health condition, can be very harmful. In a country where 1 in 5 people are affected by a mental health condition, it's time for all of us to step up and change the conversation. Just because someone's struggle isn't obvious on the outside doesn't mean they aren't hurting on the inside. We need to see the person, not the condition. Join with me, pledge to be stigma-free.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
Suicide causes immeasurable pain, suffering, and loss to individuals, families, and communities nationwide. On average, 112 Americans die by suicide daily.
But suicide is preventable, so it's important to know what to do. If someone you know is showing one or more of the following behaviors, please don't ignore these warning signs. Get help immediately. Talking about wanting to die or kill oneself. Looking for a way to kill oneself. Talking about feeling hopeless or having no reason to live. Talking about feeling or being trapped or the feeling of being trapped or in unbearable pain. Talking about being a burden to others.
Also, increasing the use of alcohol or drugs, acting anxious or agitated, behaving recklessly, sleeping too little or too much, withdrawing or feeling isolated, showing rage or talking about seeking revenge, displaying extreme mood swings.
Again, if someone you know are showing any signs of these behaviors or symptoms, please seek help immediately. You can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Trained crisis workers are available to talk 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Or you can always call the NAMI Suicide Helpline or Talk Line. That's 877-727-4747. Again, 877-727-4747. The helpline is open 24 hours a day, and a counselor can try to help. Or if you're having thoughts or even contemplating thoughts of suicide, brought to you by NAMI San Fernando Valley and Loving Beyond Reason.
And Loving Beyond Reason.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically wear my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
All right, Favi, we are back, and you were telling us about how it was kind of growing up. So let's turn the corner and talk about when you first received your first diagnosis and what that diagnosis was.
So I would say about 5 years ago, I started getting really bad panic attacks and anxiety attacks where I actually had to go to the emergency room a few times thinking I was having a heart attack because like my arm would go numb. I had like really bad heart palpitations. So I was already dealing with some, anxiety and depression. And then I would say when you try to look back and pinpoint what was really the exact cause or everything, I started seeing a therapist because all of that started increasing and getting worse. So I got diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And then unfortunately, I did have an abortion that went wrong. It caused a lot of complications. And after that,
was that here in the United States?
that was here in the United States. Yeah, so I came back from Mexico when I was 13 years old. Since then, I've been here. But I think it's important to note, so when I did come back, I did have an ovarian tumor and I got that removed and I was hospitalized for about a month. And the reason why I'm pointing that out was because while I was in Mexico, I also abused a lot of alcohol and substances. I think it was my way of coping. So when I came here, and I was in the hospital, I was also prescribed a lot of different kinds of medication. So I kept using, and as I grew, I kind of became dependent on the medication every time that I had a doctor's appointment. I kind of knew what to say.
To get extra medication.
To get what you needed.
To get what I needed. So as I grew older, and, you know, we dive into that situation, the abortion, everything kind of started to come up. And I think it was also because I stopped depending on all of those extra substances. So after I found out that I was pregnant, and, you know, I knew that it was not my time to be a parent, then, you know, just not the right time.
Yeah.
So, you know, I told myself that I would never be put in that situation or decide not to have, you know, the baby because I was, you know, abusing, whether it was drugs or alcohol. So I really stopped using a lot of prescription medication and a lot of, you know, recreational substances. So I really started to feel everything.
All the things you were trying to hide from.
All the things that I was hiding and all the things that I hadn't been feeling for so long, I think, like, started coming out. And it was just kind of like a truck hit me.
Overwhelming.
Everything was all at once. I not only was dealing with all of the unresolved emotions that I hadn't dealt with for years, right? But I was dealing with the stuff that was going on in my life. Yeah. You know, which was also very serious. So when that happened, the panic attacks increased, and they told me, you know, that, you know, you're having panic attacks, you need to seek help. I did seek help. I went to a holistic therapist. Sarah, she was great. I mean, the improvements I saw with her was just magnificent. And unfortunately, the reason why I couldn't keep up with her was because it wasn't financially, I just wasn't financially, you know, able to. It wasn't financially feasible for me. So fortunately, after that, I was able to get insurance, medical insurance, through my partner's work. You know, despite us not being married, I was able to get medical insurance. So I started seeing someone at Kaiser. Then they give me my official diagnosis, which was anxiety with bipolar depression. And then we continued. So the one thing why I'm all for therapy before I say what I'm going to say. I'm all for therapy. I personally have a up and down relationship where I'm not consistent, and the reason is because I am so afraid of the medication just because of my past that I try not to take it. I try not to be not to
complete
rely on
last
it.
resort.
Yeah,
based on your
complete
past.
last resort.
Gotcha.
So when they were giving me my diagnosis, because of different things that I had told them, you know, I had episodes of blackouts, like rage blackouts, and, you know, I wanted to harm myself. Like, there was just different things, you know. Sometimes it was just very random too, like my moods. So they wanted to test different medications to kind of eliminate the diagnosis, because they were leaning towards bipolar too as well. So I've been dealing with all of that in terms of the medical and the diagnosis.
Right,
and,
that whole
and
titration process of, and so...
and then triggers and trauma even surrounding treatment.
Yes.
And I think that's a big thing to bring up. You know, you're looking to end the suffering, but there's also sometimes an attachment. So keep going, because I like the fact that you're continuing to explore and try different things, because it's important for your actual mental wellness.
No, definitely. And I think I've always told different people that I speak to, like, when you're going to a therapist, you can interview the therapist. They're working for you, and you have to make sure that you have that rapport, that it works for you.
Which is the same thing we have to do when doctors titrate your medication. Sometimes we have to titrate the therapist that we work with, because it has to work for you. I want you to keep that thought, put a pin in it right there, because we're coming right back. Conversation is amazing. We're talking to Favi Gonzalez. Remember, next week is the end of the month, so Scott Kellaby will be here. We will be right back. All right, that's the fun music. But I see a little wiggle. Oh, there's the pole dance. Yes, this is the only place where the pole dancers don't use the pole. Anyway, that music means what, Marla?
It's poll time.
That's right. And last week we asked the question, the poll question was, what is the number of U.S. adults living with PTSD? Now, Favi, pay attention because you're going to get a chance to answer this question. The options are 5 million, 12 million, or 18 million. What do you think that is? What is the number of U.S. adults living with PTSD? Post-traumatic stress
There is no
disorder.
jackpot, though, Favi, so feel free to just answer freely.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say 18 million. I think that that's a fair number.
And it might be now because these numbers are actually pre-pandemic. So before the pandemic, it was roughly around 12 million. But now, who knows? You might be right on that. Marla, what's the new poll question for this week?
Next week's poll question is, what is the average delay between onset of mental illness symptoms and treatment? A, 1.5 years, B, 5 years, or C, 11 years? Favi, first shot, what do you think?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes, Marla.
What is the average delay between onset of mental illness
When you first
symptoms
realize
and
that you have
treatment?
symptoms of mental illness and you
Okay.
finally get treatment, what is that delay on an average for
The
most people?
choices are 1.5 years, 5 years, or 11 years.
5 years?
Okay, so
Okay.
this answer, like the one from last week, will be revealed next week, but you're on record, Favi, as saying your answer was what, 5 years?
5 years.
Okay,
5
awesome. Again,
So
you
tune
guys
in next week.
Yes, go ahead, Marla.
I was gonna say, make sure that you tune in next week and let's watch Favi hit it out of the park. And for all of you at home, you can find the poll question on all of our social media. We encourage you. We love to hear your voice. Please vote.
All right, Favi, now, before we did all that fun pole dancing, or Marla was doing the pole dancing, actually, you were telling us about your diagnosis, and you were still dealing with the titration process, as well as telling us about and reminding all of us that just because you start therapy, not every therapist is right for you. And it's not a slap in the therapist's face or something wrong with you, the fact that you might start with a therapist and feel the need to move to a different one. That fit has to be right, just like your favorite pair of shoes.
Definitely. No, I agree. I mean, and it was like my personal experience was where I did have to switch therapists, or actually at that point it was psychiatrists, because I felt like the individual wasn't getting to know me. The first thing was just, oh, I'm going to prescribe you this. I'm like, you don't even know what I'm feeling, or you haven't asked me that. So that's why I really do think it's important. I definitely try to advocate for myself in terms of that, just because I know my past. I know what, my urges may be sometimes depending on what I'm feeling. I fought very hard to overcome that part of my life where I'm just very protective of that. Even when I go to the doctor or anything like that, I suffer really bad migraines, and I refuse unless I'm absolutely like, I can't take it. I refuse to take any stronger medication than the over the counter. Yeah.
And so, and we appreciate that. And I want to say, and Marla will probably co-sign this, and I'm pretty sure this is where she was going, advocating for yourself is extremely important, especially when it comes to mental health. It also... Go ahead, Marla.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, go ahead, Finn. I want you to finish.
I was going to say it helps to also alleviate the feeling that, especially when can be sort of unbalanced a little bit, and not quite sure of if this is real, if this is, if this is in my mind. It helps to alleviate those things when you're advocating for yourself, because when something isn't right, you're asking questions of somebody and saying, please help me. And you're also saying, I'm not sure this helped, because they can use the feedback as well, is helpful. Marla, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that isn't what I was going to say, but I would like to add, so we've all found our way, usually, Favi, through personal experience, most everyone I know, into NAMI. And you did answer one question, because I was very intrigued by the combination of you, of course, reaching out and becoming an advocate and wanting to teach and do work with homelessness, which is what you experienced. But then you mentioned that your brother had autism, and then also to deal with, you know, the Latin community, with Latino community. So how did you actually take all of these experiences, and what was your doorway into NAMI?
You know what? It's funny that you asked that, and everything happens for a reason. I'm a firm believer because I got this job. I actually met Kim Bonnell, who's the president of NAMI San Fernando Valley, through the application next door. There was some sort of issue in the neighborhood. Someone had asked if there were any job openings. He responded with the job, and I actually emailed him privately telling him like my background, the work I've done with homeless people, you know, my personal story, and asking him for an interview. So he gave me the interview, and it was from there. I really knew I wanted the job. So before this, I was working at another nonprofit, San Fernando Valley Bar Association. And it was, we would provide legal resources or referrals to the community, San Fernando Valley community. Unfortunately, I felt like some sort of restrictions with my abilities as to what I was able to do. So when I saw the education coordinator and the responsibilities under it, I was like, okay, that gives me a lot of freedom and liberty to really make my own partnerships and build my own relationships and cater to the specific community needs that I'm like, you know, looking to grow.
Yeah.
So it really just went from there. It went from me having that experience with a nonprofit, kind of having an idea of what we can and cannot do, because I think there's a lot of misconception too with what nonprofits and what people think that we can and cannot do, you know. There's a lot of things that go behind operations wise. So I loved the position. When I spoke to Kim, and he pretty much reiterated everything that was listed. It was a long process, but I just felt like very compelled because, like I said, I had been doing Heal the Hunger, and what Heal the Hunger is, it's just for 3 years now, myself and friends, we've been feeding the homeless here in San Fernando Valley.
Well, that's a personal thing that you've been doing.
This is just all personal that we started. Yeah, like donations on social media. I believe like the power of social media.
Yeah.
You know, we've raised enough funds to feed up to 150 people, provide them blankets.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, toiletries.
That's awesome.
You know, with no affiliation. So I spoke to a lot of homeless people, you know, 3 years in a row. It's typically to the same encampment. You have conversations.
Yeah.
There was a lot of conversations that kind of coincided. They went hand in hand with mental illness and homelessness. So I was just like, I'm already there. That's something I'm passionate about. I'm dealing with my own mental struggles. I've dealt with them within my family. If I can share my story to help someone else, why not do that?
That is amazing. So, and first of all, I'll say this, and we're going to come back with Favi after this next break, but it all seems to, for you, and the best place to start is with the desire to serve others, and then suddenly, you know, the opportunities are endless.
Yeah, definitely.
The opportunities are endless if you're willing to jump in there and help out. And Favi, you have done that. You continue to do that.
Thank you.
Do that, and we celebrate you. We'll be right back.
Bad.
Worthless.
Don't trust them. They'll hurt you. You're worthless.
It's pointless.
When the pain of schizophrenia meets hope, everything can change. Help someone who is struggling by supporting the National Alliance on Mental Illness and be a part of the NAMI effect. Hope starts with you.
It's raw, real, and unfiltered. Marla, Dave.
Our guest has been and is Favi Gonzalez. She not only shared her personal story, but even as she turned the corner, how she found NAMI, and didn't just find NAMI through some of the classes, but she found NAMI as an attempt to help serve her community. Marla, you're about to say something?
Yes, I am. I was just going to say that we want Favi to give us our parting thoughts before we go, but I wanted to just tell you that your truth is so brave. And I just really want to say thank you for such a transparent share, because those are the things that, you know, the big thing we're trying to crush is to really reiterate that you are not alone. We are all in this. Mental health challenges is not your issue. It's our issue. And today what you shared, it is just amazing. And I just literally, I was like, man, I love that courage and bravery to just be completely transparent, because you matter immensely.
As well as a shout out and kudos to you for not being ashamed to say what the diagnosis actually is, because we also want to let people know there's no stigma in the diagnosis. You are not your diagnosis, whatever it might be. You're still a person, a wonderfully made person, and there's love out there for you if you're able to allow yourself to be open to it.
Definitely. No, I mean, it doesn't define you. Your diagnosis doesn't define you. And it took me a lot to really be open. I feel like I've always been very transparent, but with this, you always have some hesitation because you obviously know that there is that stigma behind it. Not only with that, but, you know, talking about abortion, of course, postpartum. So no, definitely. And then the one thing I just want to advise everyone is or tell everyone it's okay to not be okay. You don't have to be happy all the time. You know, you can cry, and try to have someone there for you, someone that you can confide in and trust, because I definitely had that in my journey, and I have to attribute a lot of my success and that to those people who really stood behind me and were in my corner. So definitely it's okay to not be okay and do things for you.
Thank you, Favi, so much for joining us on Mental Health Mondays. Dave?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Marla, you were saying?
No, join us next week. We will. It's month in, and we'll have Scott Killaby
absolutely
in studio with more amazing mental wellness and mindfulness information. We'll see you next week, Monday.
Have a good week.